In this video, we're going to be looking at solving equations where they have variables on both sides of the equation, and we will also look at special situations where equations have no solution or infinitely many solutions. Okay, so let's start with our first example. They want us to solve 10 minus 4x equals negative 9x. Okay, so you guys by now are used to the fact that you can add or subtract numbers like 10 or 5 or whatever to both sides of an equation in order to cancel it on one side and combine it with something on the other side. Well, it turns out that you could do the same thing with variable terms. So what I mean here is, since we have some x's on the left and we have some x's on the right, we could put those x's together by canceling out one of them. So since we have 10 on the left side, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out the 4x by adding 4x to both sides. So the 10 drops down. Negative 4x combined with positive 4x is 0. And then negative 9x combined with positive 4x is negative 5x. So now it's a pretty easy problem. We just have to divide by negative 5. And that gives us our answer, right? This is 1, so 1x equals negative 2. Okay, I'll write down a monitoring progress problem for you to work on, and that is this one. Negative 2x equals 3x plus 10. So go ahead and work on this, pause the video, and then when you unpause it, the solution should be there. And here is the solution. Okay, we're going to move on to example 2 now. So example 2, now we've got a lot going on. 3 times the quantity 3x minus 4 equals 1/4 times the quantity of 32x plus 56. Okay, so when you have a lot going on, in this case on each side of the equation, you should simplify each side before you start moving things around across the equal sign. So on the left side, we could distribute the 3. So 3 times 3x gives us 9x. 3 times minus 4 is minus 12. And then over here, 1/4 of 32, so that's 32 divided by 4, is 8x. And then 56 divided by 4 is 14. All right, so I look at the variables now, and I have 9x on the left and 8x on the right. So I'm going to cancel the smaller one. I'm going to cancel the 8x by subtracting it to this side. So now this gives me 1x minus 12 equals 14. And my final step will be to add 12 to both sides. And that leaves us with x equals 26. Okay, here are 2 problems for you to work on now, monitoring progress. Number 2. And number 3. Okay, take a few minutes to work on these. Pause it now, and when you unpause it, the solutions will appear. And here are the solutions. Now we're going to look at a couple of special situations. So just by looking at the problems, you can't tell right off the bat that these are special situations. But as you work through it, some interesting things are going to happen that's going to require you to interpret what's going on. So if we look at A, the first thing we're going to do is distribute the 3. Okay, so we get this. And then the next thing we would do is to put the x's on the same side, right? So we would do that by subtracting 15x to both sides. Now what you'll notice here is that 15x minus 15x is 0, so we're left with 6. And then on the right side, 15x minus 15x is also 0, so we're left with 0. So you end up after working this problem out, you end up with an equation 6 equals 0. Now obviously 6 does not equal 0, and it never can equal 0. So when you come across a situation like this, where your result doesn't make sense, then that indicates that there is no solution to the original equation. Now, if we look at B, in B, let's go ahead and solve it like we normally would. So we distribute the -2, and we get negative 8y minus 2 equals negative 8y minus 2. So right away, you should notice that the left side of the equation and the right side of the equation are exactly the same. And in fact, we could go ahead and do one more step. Let's add 8y to both sides. All right, and they both cancel, so we get -2 equals -2. Now, unlike the first problem where we ended up with 6 equals 0, which doesn't make sense, now we end up with -2 equals -2, which is always true. And so the way we interpret that is that no matter what y is, this equation is going to work out. So this is what we call an identity. And what an identity implies is that there are infinitely many solutions. Or another way of saying that is that y can be any real number. Okay, usually when we solve an equation, we end up with just one solution, at least linear equations. But in this case, we get infinitely many solutions. Now, another interesting point of this, which we'll talk about in the future, is when you graph these things, for A, the two lines are parallel, so they never cross. Whereas for B, the two lines are going to be coinciding, or in other words, they're going to be exactly the same line. And so that means that they share an infinitely many number of points. Okay, your turn to try a few problems. You can look at the problems and then pause. Okay, here are the 4 problems I want you to try, and pause it now and then unpause it for the solutions. All right, here are the solutions. Go ahead and pause it so you can look over each one and see if you got them right, and if you didn't, you can analyze your mistakes. And that'll be it for today. See you tomorrow.